Hey guys, Brent Hull Build Show, talking today at the Kel House. Now last week we looked at this house as an architectural study of the things we can learn. Today we're going to be talking about the work that we're going to do to restore this house, to bring it back like new. Today on the Build Show, come join me. We're at the Kel House. This is an early 1900s house. It's a neoclassical style house, the big columns in the front. Now we're doing an exterior restoration. That includes the windows and especially this porch. Let's go stand up on the porch. Let's look at these windows. Let's look at the things that we're going to do to kind of bring this house back up to speed, and the things that we can learn and the challenges that we're going to face and study over the next 6, 8, 10, 12 months as we work on this house and bring it back to new. We're doing the woodwork, right? We're doing the windows, we're doing this porch restoration. It's kind of a mess, right? Now, one of the things I want you to understand is identifying that we're trying to do to try to figure out what needs to be restored and what doesn't. For instance, this porch ceiling is in great shape. There's no reason to do anything with this porch work. All the beadboard here, I would say, is in good shape. Now, the things that you're seeing that maybe aren't in good shape is this wood floor, which has been replaced, okay? You just look at this column detail and you'll notice that this base is much different than this base over here. And look what's happened here is this porch is kind of dumped in, okay? We know that something structural has happened underneath here, and we can look at this column and say, okay, yeah, this base was added later, and someone just kind of globbed a bunch of caulk in there, right, to try to hold this thing together. Holding it together with putty and caulk, right? It just doesn't work. But this column, that capital, that ionic capital, is in good shape, okay? So most likely we're gonna be taking this stuff back to our shop. We're gonna be finding out where the sound wood is and where it isn't. For instance, this wood is in really sound shape and it's really thin. But look at this nail, right? That's a rusted nail. Now, we use stainless steel nails so that any kind of things we do like this will never show up later. What's happened is they've nailed it with a galvanized nail or something. That galvanization has come off as it's gone through there and it's started to rust. And those rust stains are coming out in different places. We don't want to do that. So that's long-term deterioration. On these tall columns, we've got the same kind of structural issue happening here too. We've got this is called an attic base, okay? This is where you have the Taurus and the Taurus split by the cavetto right there, where you've got those two, that stepped base. That's called an attic base. Our attic base here has become squinched. We've lost the cavetto. So the weight and everything else is coming down on the spot. You see the structural integrity that's been lost on the inside. So this porch floor will come completely up, and we will re-engineer and redo this floor so that it is strong and substantial and can support the weight of these columns. But again, even though this base is nasty, okay, the soundness of this wood is still pretty good, okay? So we will restore this thing. This is not a throwaway, right? This is we've got, because we know this house was built in the early 1900s, we know that the wood is really good. We're gonna fix this base, which has also been replaced, most likely with like pressure treated wood. We're gonna go back with good wood. So good wood, good restoration. We're gonna fix this and make this better. All right, so we know that this thing has been fixed a couple times, right? We know that this plinth, remember that's the supportive piece, was made with pressure treated wood. This is not how it would have been originally made. We're gonna make a better plinth here. You'll also notice that how these pieces were made in parts. We see all the glue lines that have broken over time, right? As this base was made up like that. We're gonna try to work to piece ours together so those glue lines never show up. Also notice this here, all of these breaks here, okay, that would have been how this wood column would have been made. It would have made in individual little pieces that have all been glued together. Really good ones actually had an interlocking snap thing. Some of the less expensive columns were just glued together, okay? So we'll work on restoring that kind of thing. You find places where there's a little bit of rotten wood, okay? We're gonna examine that, and this wood is soggy. I could push my finger into there. Any place on this house that we know was built in the early 1900s, we know most likely was the wood that was repaired, because this is wood that's falling apart. I mean, this it's not, what is it, 12 inches difference in height, but this is still standing good. Notice that there's a natural slope on this. Water cannot be standing still. Historically, they designed that slope into this thing so that these balustrades sit on a slope, and so there's no water that can collect on here. And then over here, as you look at this base, right, this one's completely shot, right? We are gonna have to completely rebuild that base, but once this whole base becomes strengthened, right, we'll be able to put that back down, fix that base, and make this thing just like new. So one of the other things we're going to be working on is these windows. You'll note if you watched the last week's video that this house has changed a little bit over time. This porch was closed in the 20s, so that's why we've got casement windows here, but we know because of this hinge with the ball finial that it's probably a pre-1930s hinge. So we can date it by the 1920s, we can date it because it's a casement versus a double hung. We know that this was an addition, but this will come completely off, and we're going to fix all this kind of, you know, caulk glazing here. They don't have putty glazing in there, they just have caulk, and you can see how that piece of glass moves. We'll take these out, take them back to our shop, and completely restore them. Let me show you a few other things that's happening on this house which are pretty cool. We've got a solid masonry foundation, right? So you can see here where this brick has been falling away, and here's the other side. Well, you know, and what they used back then is they used a lime mortar. So meaning the lime is the sticky thing that kind of held everything together. When that deteriorates and falls apart, these things start falling apart, and you can see that one thickness is falling away from the other side. They weren't bonded together. We know that this stucco laid out over top of it was an attempt to keep this deterioration from going away. So we're going to look at things as we go around the outside of this house that need restoration and need work on an old house if you happen to own one. We talked about masonry in my last video and the quality of this masonry, but what you're seeing here is that on the corner of this building, which gets the most rain, you're seeing these bricks starting to fall apart where there's actually mortar gone and the mortar is actually washed out. And so this would be something if you have an historic house and you're trying to fix this is something that needs to be repointed, okay? And so what that means is that you would actually come in here and fix these things. You'd put a backer rod behind there, and then you'd repoint these bricks with that same pencil line, if you can, a dyed pencil line, right? So that you could get this thing back in working order. This brick, and you see the water that's gotten behind this, has caused these bricks to spalt, okay? Spalting is where moisture gets inside of that brick and actually kicks the face of the brick off. So we've got some deterioration happening. We know there's water getting behind here. We've got to fix that moisture content before we can repair this area and make it like new. Now here's something that's pretty interesting. Remember I talked about the kitchen on the inside in that other video, and we talked about how ice would be delivered, right? We are looking at the old ice chute, okay? Where they would have brought a block of ice and actually put it in the back of an ice box. And so there would have been a door here. You'd have opened it up, you'd have slid the piece of ice. They had big ice houses at that time. They would slide a block of ice into your ice box and it would keep things cool. Now, notice how this brickwork isn't of the same quality as this, right? Here you have all these even bricks. We've got all these washed bricks. The mortar work isn't as good without a chipped bricks, right? The quality of this repair, right, isn't as good as the rest of the quality in the house. We have an upper door here that would have been for a different purpose. Maybe another ice block up here, but maybe a window sitting over top of the ice box, but this would have been a servant's area where you would have worked and gained access to the servant side of the house. Remember on last week's video, we talked about the gum wood study, okay? Well, that's what this is right here, okay? And we know by looking at it that because of the gum wood that it was an addition later. We also know it was an addition later because over time it is actually separated from the main house. Most likely when this was made, it was actually touching tight, but it's moved about an inch off the face of the building and we actually see this crack. Notice too that over here, these pencil lines are dyed the same color as the brick. Over here, they are not. We've got a slightly pinky color versus the red, and so we actually see a different level of quality here. These pencil lines look like they're made just of lime and mortar. These look like they're made from straight lime, okay? A different craftsman, 25 years later would have come along, tried to mimic this, but didn't quite get it. You'll also see that in here we have a different, more of a blend of colors than we do over here, where these colors are very even. Actually, there's some different colors in here that create that blend. All really minuscule, small things, but as you walk around your house and you're trying to, sleuth it and figure out when it was built and what's going on. For instance, right? This metal awning, right? When was that built? That wasn't built in the turn of the century. Most likely, because it's metal like that, it was done in the 40s or 50s. And so we begin to pick up the details, the materials that are used, and the other things that give us clues on when something was made. So our scope of work when we start on this is the front porch, the windows, and then that cornice and that eave above. So it looks like it's in pretty good shape. There may be a little bit of rotting. We would know that if there was water presence because we'd see the signs of the water coming through and leaking, pushing the paint off the wood. Not much of that as you go around the house, so it gives us hope that we won't be working too much on that eave. So a restoration like this, if you have an old house, what are the things to look for? What should be working on? Well, the first thing is that you've got to get your foundation straight. You got to get those structural things, those columns cannot be put back up until that porch flooring has been fixed, right? So we're going to be working on doing the structural aspect of that thing while those things, the columns are being restored at our shop, and then we'll come back out. Windows are something that not only the eye architecturally of the house, but they really help control the heat and cold and the water penetration. So we got to get those windows fixed, especially those casements on the side. And then third is the masonry. Now we're not doing the masonry and some of this structural stuff. We're working with the company Trinity Hughes, which is going to be working beside us trying to get this work done, but that masonry work's got to be done too. Water is the enemy, right? We can't have water coming in and any moisture coming into the house. So these things that we're redoing on the exterior are making this so it can last another 100 years. This house is built early 1900s. It's now 2021, right? And so it's over 110 years old. It's time for a fix-up. But the materials and the quality of the materials that we're going to be restoring are so high, nothing is disposable here. Nothing is something that we're going to have to throw away. It's all something that we can restore, rebuild, and have it last another 100 years. Be sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks for watching. This is a project that's going to go on for a while, so we'll come back to it, revisit it at the shop. Should be a lot of fun. I'm Brent Hull. Thanks for watching.